Is there not an entire section on this subject?
Yes, so it's unfair. I may have changed my mind about ether.
Is your book for sale back?
Yes.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness?
I'm not sure. I just go and try and do a better job.
Say it like you mean it. This is my Bible.
Yo, Trey.
What up?
I got something to say.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Let Me Tell You, episode 102. I'm your host, Norm, the Master's Dog Dunham, a.k.a. the Evangelical Norm. So this week has been a pretty active week in the news cycle. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff we could talk about. But mainly, the couple of things I really wanted to that really are impactful, I guess are impactful. Of great significance. Well, not even that. I don't know. I mean, is anything really of great significance anymore? I mean, the way our media works and the way things happen, I mean, it's like we go from one thing to the next, and it's like if there's not somebody there to just kind of continue to sound the siren's call to bring awareness to these things, they just kind of fade into obscurity. And I mean, some of the things that I want to talk about, the kind of three topics, it's kind of a formulaic show. I mean, if you've watched me for any time, I do three pictures, I do three topics, sometimes we get a little different, but for the most part, I kind of grab, it's like a sermon. This is your Evangelical Norm Monday morning 3-point sermon, right? This is what we do. But, it is what it is. So the first and foremost thing I really want to talk about is Pastor James Coates, pastor up in Alberta, Canada, I believe. This is a man that is in jail right now because he continued to hold church services against the health mandates or whatever. Now, I'm not familiar with Canadian law. I don't know. I mean, they don't have a First Amendment like we have a First Amendment. I don't know. I'm not familiar with all those things. I mean, I should probably get my buddy Josh Crease on sometime to kind of break down. But what I do know is this pastor has been gathering his church, what the Bible tells us to do. And again, it's not that he's saying people can't wear masks to church, but they're not requiring them, and they are gathering and they are preaching the word and they are doing what the Bible calls him as a pastor to do, to preach the word, to edify the saints, to do the things that he's called to do as a pastor. And the church is doing what they are called to do, to join together, to gather together, to worship God corporately. This is what the Bible tells us to do. So they are following the mandates of their faith. And because of that, Canada has put this man in jail. And so we're watching this, and we're hoping. He did have a hearing the other day where they denied his release, so he is staying in jail until there's a hearing. I don't know all the specifics. I don't know when any of this is going to happen, how much longer. He's basically been on quarantine as he's been there, so it's almost been a solitary confinement kind of situation, which is just crazy. Ali Stuckey interviewed his wife last week on her show Relatable. You should go check that out and hear Aaron Coates talk about the things that are going on. But what bothers me more than anything is that the Christian church is definitely divided between people that I would consider believers. You have the R. Scott Clark group of people that are like just hate Doug Wilson. And I mean, Doug Wilson derangement syndrome is almost as serious as Trump derangement syndrome, if not worse. I think maybe it's a worse thing going on with people deranged about Doug Wilson and Jeff Durbin and James White and this kind of school of reformed theology, post-millennial, and I, to be honest, I don't know where James Coates falls. in his theology either. I was gonna look up the website for his church, Grace Church, I believe, Grace Point Grace Church. I can't remember the name of it, in Alberta. And I did look at through a little bit of their who we are kind of things. But again, it doesn't get into post-millennial, any of that stuff. I don't know if he is a guy that takes any kind of influence from James White or from Doug Wilson or anything like that. But there is this group, Christine Pack specifically, who's been tweeting just the most horrible things from her Twitter. And I mean, I have really close friends that I love that follow the Sola Sisters. I think that's a podcast that she does or something. And, you know, but this woman is so deranged. I mean, seriously. I mean, the whole gist of her thing is that he's not in jail because because of persecution, because he's preaching, but he's in jail just simply because he violated laws and so on. But again, we fall into this place of what do we follow as Christians? Do we follow man's law or God's law? We follow man's law. We can look at Romans 13 and we can acknowledge Romans 13 until it causes us to violate what God has called us to do. And that is what these health mandates do, to shut down a church, to say you cannot gather, you cannot preach, you cannot do these things. That violates what we are mandated to do as Christians, to continue to gather, to preach the word, to edify the saints, to do the things that we are called to do, both as believers and as pastors. And so, again, I've never been a fan of this woman. I mean, from watching her, just the way that she is so vehemently anti-Doug Wilson and James White. I mean, and it's not that I owe any allegiance to these men. When I don't agree with Doug, I'll say I don't agree with Doug. And there's many instances and places where language has been used and things have been written and things have been said where I say, no, Doug, I don't agree. I'm not a Doug acolyte. I'm not a member of his church. But I do gain wisdom and some good things from him and some of the things he's written, but he's not infallible. And so I'm willing to call him out. James White, the same thing. I've disagreed with Dr. White in many of instances, ways that he has argued in debates and things like that. So again, it's not that you have to be in full agreement, but to the way that this woman is just like nothing they do can ever possibly be good. And again, I know there are scandals and situations that have come out of Christ Church in the past, and some of those things were horrible, and I don't know all the specifics, and I don't know how they were handled completely or anything like that. All I know is that as I look at Doug Wilson today, he is a good teacher, he is a good pastor, he is a great theologian, and he is, he's taking care of his church, and yes, he has influence in a lot of other places. But again, to take one situation or two I don't know how many situations, to take those and then just suddenly insist that there's nothing good can come out of Moscow, Idaho. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, she's literally, in the attitude that she has, that nothing good comes out of Moscow. I mean, she's literally aligning herself with the way the Pharisees were in the Bible. But yes, they're gonna immediately throw the Pharisee card at us. It's amazing the schism that is there in Christianity, but and in Reformed circles and everything. I mean, again, wow. So the bottom line is Pastor James Coates is still in prison. He's still locked up because he continued to preach the gospel. And yes, it is a manner of persecution. The state is coming after him because he refused to obey their orders and chose to obey what the Word of God told him to do instead, and they're mad. And and we're seeing the same thing happening in Moscow, Idaho, with stickers on poles and things like that. And, because Doug Wilson refused to bend the knee to, I can't remember the mayor's name, Little or something like that, the mayor in Moscow. And so that they painted a target on their back. And so pray for Pastor Coates. Pray that he is released. Pray that that the persecution against him would stop. And again, I understand that there are far worse examples of persecution throughout the world. Believe me, I do a podcast every other week and every day through the month of November where I discuss the horrible persecution that occurs all over the world, throughout the Middle East, throughout China, throughout many other areas where people are beaten, bruised, raped, murdered for their faith in Christ. And so, so he's only in jail for a little bit, but it's still persecution because he refuses to. Have they arrested? I mean, I can't imagine that every restaurant, every business in Alberta is falling in lockstep with all of these mandates and so on. Have those other people been arrested? I mean, maybe they have. Maybe they have. Maybe this is just not a targeting of a faithful Christian, but it looks to be the targeting of a faithful Christian. So then the other thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit of Joe Biden and this whole mask mandate thing and stuff like that. I mean, what was the statement that he made when Texas and Mississippi decided to rescind all the executive orders, ordering masks, no more mask mandates, letting everybody open up to 100%? He called them Neanderthals. It was Neanderthal thinking to pull these things back. And of course, when Jen Psaki, his press secretary, was questioned about it, she had to circle back or something I don't know. She basically doubled down on it, and she was like, he said it's Neanderthal thinking, she said it was Neanderthal behavior, but nowhere at any point did anyone apologize for calling those of us who do not want to or believe in wearing masks Neanderthals. I mean, it literally was an insult aimed at those of us who do not. I don't need a mask. I've had COVID. I can't get it. I can't give it. Why are we treating this virus like it is so different? I actually unfriended people this week on Facebook because I just can't anymore. I could have just muted them. But I'm not dealing with the ridiculous notion that this is a guy that had COVID that is telling people you need to stay away from me or you need to wear a mask until you get the vaccine and because I don't want to get COVID. And it's like, you do not understand. You've had COVID, which means you have antibodies, but you're not going to allow anyone around you unless they've had the vaccine, which is essentially giving them antibodies. And why do we not treat this like any other virus that we've ever treated in the past? Why is this suddenly like the super duper going to kill everybody when it has a 98.2% survivability rate? Why has this become, and again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it has absolutely nothing to do with compassion and it has everything to do with control. And that is the bottom line. None of these mask mandates or anything like that have anything to do with compassion. It is a litmus test to see how well they can control you. And that's what it is. And that's why it's Neanderthal thinking. And no. I mean, 2 weeks from now, when we see what happens in Texas and Mississippi, but all we have to do is look at Florida. I mean, it did not become the burning ash heap that it was expected to become. I mean, it's basically one of the oldest states. It has the oldest age demographic of I think any state in the union. I think it may be the number one and the oldest states. But New York lost so many more people than Florida did. And okay, well, the population, no, well, but still, Florida is filled with the people who were supposed to be so susceptible and so vulnerable to this, but yet they didn't have nearly as many of them die, and they didn't have nearly the restrictions. So we have science, we have data, we can look at what has happened and what has gone on, and we can look at the mask mandates and things like that, and say that the science is pretty sound in the way that the science has always dealt with viruses and so on. So yeah, I mean, to call people Neanderthals because they don't want to wear masks or they're not going to lock people down or anything like that, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, it's taking a page out of Trump's, playbook. You know, they hate Trump. He's so bad, and he was so. And I called Trump out for calling names, so I can call Biden out for calling names and remain consistent. I did not excuse it on the part of the Republican president, and I will not excuse it on the part of the Democrat president. Calling people names is immature and childish. And to say that it's Neanderthal thinking because they follow what the science has shown for hundreds of years, that as we've dealt with and found out more about viruses, but yet for whatever reason, this one is like we're going to have to be socially distant and masked up for the rest of our lives, which means I have a whole group of friends that I will never see again. Thanks, Mr. President. Would you like to take some questions now? Fade to black. That was the other thing I was going to mention about it. I was going to play the little video clip, but I decided not to, of Biden in the Nancy Pelosi's the Democratic Caucus interview or whatever presentation he made, where she told some weird whacked out story about her grandkids. Instead of saying open sesame to the doors, they said open Biden, and then at the end he was like, okay, Nance, I'll take some questions if that's what I'm supposed to do, and fade to black. They covered him up and said, no, Mr. President, you are not going off script. Apparently I read somewhere that they actually at some point in time he did take questions, but I mean the visual on that is just classic. This dude is I wanted to say that Biden is almost as much a prisoner as James Coates is right now. Only they allow him to go out and say some things every once in a while, as long as he's reading off of a teleprompter and as long as he retains the capability and the ability to read. Capability and ability. Yeah, to read off of a teleprompter. And it's sooner. I still stand by my prediction. I'm late on it. I admit. He's lasted more than 25 minutes after the inauguration, but I'm willing to guarantee that he will not finish out this term. The 25th Amendment will be invoked at some point in time. Either that or he's going to step down for his own health reasons, and we will have President Kamala Harris, and we'll deal with that when we get there. But still, I mean, it's almost sad to watch this man try to pretend that he's running the country, because we all know he's not. Everybody knows he's not pulling the strings. He's not in charge of anything. So that brings me to the last thing is. So there was a group last year that called themselves the Pro-Life Evangelicals for Biden. Okay, there are so many problems wrong with that statement in and of itself. I could do an entire Master's Dog episode off of that one. But they're upset now. They're not happy that they spent some of their political capital to back this guy because they refused to back the other guy. And I'm like, I'm cool. I'm cool with you not backing the other guy. Okay, and I'm not even the guy that called for excommunication or that everybody who voted Democrat is sinful. I could never reconcile within myself any possibility of ever voting for a Democrat based on their platform and abortions alone. But gay marriage, LGBT, all the other stuff that is thrown in with that. I mean, I would never vote Democrat. I'm far too, but I have no problem with people not choosing to vote Republican either. I mean, I didn't vote for either one of these men. But when you make it a binary choice, a false binary choice, that you have to vote for one or the other, and then you take your platform as pro, and I don't know that I would consider either one of these dudes. I don't know Ronald J. Sider, but I followed Richard Mao's career for quite some time. I don't know that I would consider him truly pro-life. He is pro-life in the same way that Abby Johnson is pro-life. She doesn't want to see abortion abolished. She wants to, she would never call for the conviction and prosecution of women who murder their babies. Oh no, they're victims. They're not, we're good with heartbeat bills and stuff like that. That's their style of pro-life. They are not pro-life the way that I'm pro-life, where I say all abortion should be illegal, period, and women and doctors and anyone who go, and again, there's different levels of judgment, and that's why we have judges who make those decisions, but they should be prosecuted. And there are women that I have encountered, women who leave notes on people's cars while we're out at the abortion mill, pleading for the lives of babies, put things on that talk about eating placentas and so on, and eating their fetus and what, just horrible stuff. Proof that these women are not victims. These women are not victims. Not all of them, not the majority of them. The majority of them go in there with a full knowledge of what it is they are doing. For their own convenience sake, they are murdering their children. And I've had horrific conversations with women who absolutely know and prove that they are not victims, and that they should indeed be prosecuted for murder. But no, Richard Mao and Abby Johnson would never agree to anything like that. But here's this letter, an open letter to Biden. They're so upset. Let me share a little bit of this letter with you and share what I think about it. We are very disappointed about the COVID-19 relief package's exclusion of the Hyde Amendment, a long-standing bipartisan policy that prevents taxpayer funding for abortion. Okay, and see here again, the Hyde Amendment is nothing more than a shell game. It's literally a shell game. Okay, federal funding is going to Planned Parenthood and things like that, but you can't use that money for abortions. So we're going to use that money for office supplies and blah, 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 blah. And anything that we would have allotted to office supplies and blah, 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 blah gets allotted to abortion. So thank you very much. The Hyde Amendment does absolutely nothing. It is a smokescreen to say, oh, we're pro-life, but we really don't care what is happening behind the closed doors of Planned Parenthood. We're even more upset that the Biden administration is supporting this bill. As pro-life leaders in the evangelical community, we publicly supported President Biden's candidacy with the understanding that there would be engagement us on the issue of abortion, and particularly the Hyde Amendment. The Biden team wanted to talk to us during the campaign to gain our support, and we gave it on the condition that there would be an active dialogue and common ground solutions on the issue of abortions. There's been no dialogue since the campaign. Did you expect anything else? Really? Really? I mean, the fact that they went and had meetings with the Biden campaign is just boggles me. I mean, I didn't realize there were like actual talks and so on. I would love to have been a fly on the wall during that debacle. But did you really think that the Democrats were going to uphold anything that they said they were going to do? I mean, the Republicans don't even do that, and they're supposed to be conservative, right? I mean, look at what's his name, Leach in Texas, who was supposed to help with this bill to abolish abortion in Texas, and then he didn't even let it get out of committee. The pro-life senator from Texas, or congressman or whatever in the Texas legislature that was going to be, and then he bombed it in committee and never let out. Is anyone really surprised that the Democrats went and took these people's support and then left them out to dry? Good job, Dr. Mao. Well done. We feel used and betrayed, really. I have no intention of simply watching these kinds of efforts happen on the sidelines. Many evangelicals and Catholics took risks to support Biden publicly. President Biden and Democrats need to honor their courage. Really? It was courage to support the guys that in their platform is all about abortion, and literally took God out of their platform years ago and then booed when they were pressured to put him back in. and you're surprised, you feel used and betrayed. I want to know the people who are in the congregations of these pro-life evangelicals. I want to know how much they feel used and betrayed. We call on President Biden to honor his commitment to us and immediately demand that the House of Representatives apply the Hyde language to the American relief package so we can virtue signal just the same way that everybody else does, right? This is no time for radical change to longstanding abortion policy. We call on Sanford Bishop, Jim Cooper, Henry Cuellar, Marcy Kaptur, Jim Langevin, Steve Lynch, and Tim Ryan to oppose this bill as it stands and demand the Hyde Amendment be included. Okay. And if this is not done, it will raise the question of whether or not we are still welcome in the Democratic Party. Do you really think you were ever welcome, Mao? Really? Again, I am more shocked at the fact that this was even... Who wrote this? And were they able to keep a straight face? I mean, Richard Mao and Ronald Sider, President Emeritus of Evangelicals for Social Action. What the heck is that? But these guys are the names that are affixed to it. Did they write this? Did they keep a straight face when they were writing this? Were they under the influence of alcohol or drugs when they wrote this? Better yet, were they under the influence of alcohol or drugs when they believed the Democrat and the Biden administration or the Biden campaign when they said, oh, you're welcome in the party and we'll work with you on abortion? Once again, the ability to make the podcaster speechless falls firmly within the realm of pseudo-evangelical stupidity. I mean, and this is... Yeah. Okay, so, you played yourselves again, as usual. I mean, Dr. Mao has had a history of playing himself. This is a dude that came out here and spoke in Utah and agreed with the Mormons that we worship the same God. No, we don't. I mean, I've had this conversation about Mao. I've had it about Dallas Jenkins doing The Chosen and anybody else who claims to be evangelical. I mean, the only person that really came out here and made a distinction, and no, it wasn't Ravi Zacharias. It was Albert Mohler when he spoke at BYU and he spoke on politics and so on. But he made the statement. He said, I do not believe we are going to heaven together, but we may well go to jail together. And that was the point that he made. And he made an absolute distinction. He worked on... Mao didn't do that. I don't know 100% that Ravi Zacharias did that. I mean, that's a whole different topic for a whole nother day, but still. This is the ridiculousness of American quote-unquote evangelicals. It's part of why I've kind of moved away. I mean, I keep the name the evangelical norm because I still have a hope that I represent what is the norm of evangelicalism. We have the extremes, but I fully want to represent what is the norm, and that's why I maintain the name. But I've also begun to move away from it and use the Master's Dog's name more often in the things that I do, because I do want to be that guy that barks when God's word is attacked, and I will, and I'm actually preparing to in 2 upcoming episodes of the Master's Dog that you don't want to miss, because they're dealing with some interesting stuff that is out there in the culture right now, and then I'll probably do an unsolicited review of the Netflix documentary Murder Among the Mormons. I'm going to be talking about that in a Master's Dog episode coming up this week. So keep your eyes out for that. While you're at it, if you would hit the subscribe button for if you're on YouTube for the channel, subscribe, like the video, share the video, say something nice about us, because apparently that makes Super Captain Algorithm make us a little more available to other people to pick us up and like us. Hit us up on Gab. I'm really trying to garner some followers, but apparently the best way to get followers over on Gab is to, bow at the idol of the Trump cult, and I'm not going to do that. You know that for a fact. But I just haven't figured that one out. I've got 3 subscribers over on Gab TV, so there's plenty of room to subscribe over there. So you can check me out on Gab. You can hit me up at the Master's Dog or the Evangelical Norm on Twitter. Follow me at Norm Dunham on Facebook. Any of those places. Let me know what you think. Let me know if any of this was helpful or if I'm just blathering to blather. So I appreciate you guys' time. Like I said, hopefully this was helpful. And as always, preach the gospel at all times. Use words. They're necessary. And until next time, Soli Deo Gloria.